We, we were hearing you fine before, and it's gotten very, very soft now.
Okay, what about now?
Much better.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, I was saying I don't know where I left out with. I know I was saying I had an opportunity to meet Tony Franklin this weekend, and he shared with me some very awesome information, education. And I'm gonna tell y'all, you probably won't get it right off the bat. It probably take you, maybe 2-3 meetings to really get, because he had a lot to share. And so I asked him to come on the call and share with the group, and he agreed. So we are in for a treat, and I think you're going to be very, very pleased with him tonight. So
recording in progress.
Tony, if you don't mind, can you come on and just introduce yourself and tell the group a little bit about yourself and your background? Take it from there. Tony Franklin.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the call. My name is Tony Franklin.
78160.
My name is Tony Franklin. I am the executive trustee of Legacy Management Group, which is a financial research and consulting company. My background is in corporate restructuring and trust counseling. I come out of a field of restructuring multinational corporations, large domestic corporations, and transnational corporations. In doing so, we were privileged to have access to information that 99.9% of the public does not have access to. The reason I'm sharing this information with you tonight is because through our foundations, which is a financial research and education company, we are able to educate the public on how to properly structure themselves. There are two different sets of financial information that exist in this country. We call it one set of information for the informed families, and there's another set of information for the uninformed families.
Okay, Tony, I don't know why, but could you unmute yourself? Okay, there you go.
Yes. Okay. And so there's really only two types of families in this country. There are the informed families and there are the uninformed families. So it is just my hope tonight that you will be truly informed. Now, in our field, we operate on the premise of what's called the 4 keys to wealth. If these 4 keys to wealth are not put in place, you will lose any amount of wealth as quickly as you gained it. The elite have tools that they operate through that they do not share with the public. As I shared with you earlier, I come out of a field of restructuring multinational corporations. The qualification to even have access to that information is $10 million in free investment capital, $10 million in assets, and $10 million in income on an annual basis. Now, you may be wondering why I'm sharing that with you. I'm just sharing that with you so you can have a preview of when you have a certain amount of money and you meet a certain income criteria, that there's certain information that is provided to you. But if you don't meet that income criteria, you get what's offered to the public. So when you hear me share with you that there are two different types of financial information that exist, it's because of one, security and exchange laws that exist. Secondly, and we'll get into that, it's called endowments. And I'll share with you why I made that statement. And so the 4 keys to wealth that we operate through, the first key to wealth, ladies and gentlemen, is how do you put your wealth in the correct tax position? This is critical to understand. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much you keep. You want to be able to put yourself in the best possible position to be able to control your tax liability. I'm going to kind of give you some examples. There was an article that came out a few months ago. And in that article, they were sharing information about Jeff Bezos making $115 billion and paying no tax and actually get a refund. So how is that possible? How is that possible that you can make $115 billion and pay no tax and get a refund? Okay, when a W-2 wage earner is taxed at a higher rate than a business, which is ridiculous. But it's called a system of interrelating trusts, and it consists of different types of trust structures. You have fiduciary trust, you have family trust, you have charitable trust, you have private family foundations. And so with these particular type of structures, they accomplish being able to control the tax liability. And what I mean by that is that unlike you and I, this particular type of structure, it is allowed to generate income, take its lawfully allowed tax deductions, and whatever is left, it can actually move the income and tax liability on a K-1 to another person or entity, thus moving the income and tax liability. So what the elite do, they keep moving that tax liability until it ends up in a foundation where it's exempt from any federal income taxes by using a system of interrelating trust to be able to control their taxable liabilities. Now, why is this not offered to the public? When I share with you that I operate through multinational structures, if you guys Google the definition of a multinational corporation, you will see that it says it's a corporation that has, an office in another country other than its home country. It usually operates global management from that other country, and they usually have budgets that exceed those of small countries. When you keep reading the definition, it says it is an international stateless corporation, international stateless. So what does stateless mean? Stateless means that it's not connected to a state. It's not a corporation like you would go to your average attorney and they would structure a corporation for you that in whatever state that they're licensed to operate in or whatever state that you want to operate your business in. So if it's stateless, how was that entity structured? Okay, because if you want to operate internationally, they don't recognize state laws. Other countries do not recognize state laws. They recognize international law, contract law, and treaties. So you have to have a structure that's created in a way where it can operate in this manner. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, I don't have a multinational corporation, or why would I want to operate through an entity that's structured in that manner? And remember, I'm just correlating the corporation with the trust structure because our trust structures are international entities as well. So your question should be, well, why would I want to operate through an entity that way when I don't have any assets and I'm not operating internationally? The reason you want to operate in this manner is because this is the way that the elite operates to be able to control their taxable liability. And you don't have to be a Rockefeller or Goldwater to be able to accomplish this. It's just that the information is shared amongst those elite group of individuals and families. Okay. So when you're generating income, ladies and gentlemen, you always want to put yourself in the best possible position to be able to control that tax liability. So I'm going to give you some information. So for those of you that have a single member LLC, a single member LLC is considered a disregarded entity, and not just for tax purposes either. It's a disregarded entity. That means if there's litigation against you personally, they can pierce that trust and acquire those assets. Pierce that entity and acquire those assets. It's a disregarded entity. Any corporation, if I pierce your corporate veil, it leaves everybody at risk: officers, directors, stockholders, etc. The reason they offer those structures to the public is because they're easily pierceable. They can easily get to your assets through some type of, unobscure litigation or creditors or what have you. That's why they offer those entities to the public. The elite do not operate through those particular type of structures. Okay. They operate through structures where they're able to control their taxable liability by being able to generate the income, take your lawfully allowed deductions, and move the income and tax liability to different entities where it ends up in the foundation where it is exempt from any federal income taxes. See, you and I can't do that. You and I can't generate income personally and then take our deductions and then whatever's left, move it to some other person or entity. We're not allowed to do that. There's only certain entities that are allowed to operate in this manner. So the first key to wealth, ladies and gentlemen, is how do you put your wealth in the correct tax position? Okay. Every company that we have reorganized has doubled, and not only company, but family estate as well, has doubled in size and profitability every 2.5 to 4 years, because the funds that they were paying in taxes, they're now able to put back into their company and grow their businesses. Okay. So remember, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. That is the key. So the first key to wealth is, how do I put my wealth in the correct tax position. If you're getting taxed 40%, you're just spinning your wheels in life. You're just going backwards. Okay. And it's really sad for W-2 wage earners, okay, because they're taxed at a higher rate than businesses. Doesn't even make any sense. And so the key is being able to put yourself in the best possible position from a tax perspective. Okay. That's the first key to wealth. The second key to wealth is, how do I protect this wealth? Now that I'm growing my wealth, how do I protect it? How do I put that wealth in a position to protect it from creditors and litigation? Well, the elite operate in a way that most individuals have never been taught. And what I mean by that is that in our field, we were taught to never own assets, never own anything. Any asset that you own can be taxed to you or taken from you, whether it's a business, etc. Bank account, doesn't matter. Okay, ownership means liability. The reason they want you to own assets is so they can tax it to you and take it from you. The key is not to own any asset, it's to control it. That's actually what Rockefeller said. He said the key to success is to own nothing, control everything. The reason he said that is because ownership means liability. There are clear liabilities to ownership of assets. It's about controlling the assets. It is not about the ownership of assets. So how is this accomplished? If you have assets and you take those assets and you place them into this particular type of trust structure that is irrevocable, and once those assets go in irrevocable, they're now owned by the trust. And so now those assets are titled in the name of the trust. So anybody, any attorney of any litigation discovery phase are looking up those assets, they don't come up in your personal name. So if someone were to sue you personally, those assets are not titled in your personal name. And let me be clear about this. This is not a statutory trust. This is not a grantor or living trust. When individuals have a living trust, if there's any type of litigation, the courts, they pierce the trust. They call it an alter ego. They acquire the assets. Okay. So those entities are not safe. The reason the judge calls it an alter ego is because it's not a separate legal entity. It's you. There's no legal separation between you and the entity. So the second key to wealth is being able to protect that wealth from creditors and litigation. Meaning, if those assets are titled in your personal name, you will be liable through some type of unsecure litigation, creditors, what have you. So remember, never have assets titled in your personal name if you can avoid it. Okay? Ownership only means liability. That's all it means. And I know you've been taught your whole life to own assets, and it's a reason behind that. They want you to own the assets so they can come back and tax it to you and take those assets from you. The key is not to own it, it's to control it. Now, in our companies, and even I know some individuals on the call do not have businesses, so I'm going to explain this from not only a business perspective, but from a family estate perspective. So for those of you who have businesses, you should only have enough money in your bank account for operating purposes. So if there's litigation against your businesses, there's nothing there to acquire. Any asset that you need on a day-to-day basis, you should lease from another company or trust that you control. Okay? So you're going to lease it from another entity that you control. That way, if there's any litigation against your business, there's only enough money in the bank account for operating purposes, and it owns no assets. You want to put yourself in the best possible position to protect those assets from creditors and litigation. Now, for those of you who do not have a business, but you have a family estate, you have a home, you have vacation properties, rental properties, etc. You want to make sure those of you on the call that have a rental property, you should be placing those properties into a separate trust, an asset protection trust, where the only thing in that trust is that property and an insurance policy. That way, if the house caught on fire and somebody got hurt and they sued the owner is the trust. So the only thing acquirable is the property and insurance policy. Now they don't have access to your other properties or your businesses or your bank accounts. They're totally separate. This is how they lead a structure. They make sure that they manage their liability. They make sure that if you sue one company, it only has enough money in the bank account for operating purposes. It owns no assets. And for those of you who think that your insurance policies cover you, they do not. Your insurance policies do not cover punitive damages or intentional wrongdoing. So you can always be sued for more than your insurance policy covers. If that happens, everything that you own is now at risk. Okay? So the second key to wealth, ladies and gentlemen, is how do I protect that wealth? You have to place that wealth in the position to where it's protected from any creditors and litigation. And the only way to do that is make sure that those assets are not titled in your personal name. And make sure that if you're operating within the public, that with a business or driving a vehicle that is titled in your personal name, you want to make sure that your personal assets, your homes, your insurance policies, bank accounts are titled in the name of other entities. So if there's ever any litigation, you have nothing to acquire. Okay? Now, the third key to wealth is how do I get this wealth to work for me? So I put my wealth in the correct tax position. I've now protected my wealth. Now, how do I get this wealth to work for me? I'm going to share with you two tools tonight that we use in our organization. The first tool is endowments. And those of you on the call may have heard of endowments before, but you may not have ever heard of it from this perspective. Our clients make more money giving their money away. Okay. And remember, you don't have to be a Rockefeller or Goldwater to do this. Our clients make more money giving their money away. And I did say that correctly. So how was this done? And actually the endowment process is the second reason why this information doesn't get to the public. The first reason is the security and exchange laws. The second reason, I believe, is the endowment process. So what do I mean by that? And how do endowments work? Well, first and foremost, an endowment is a contract. And in this contract, let's say, we're based out of Texas. So let's say I wanted to donate $100,000 to the University of Texas. And I contact the donor department or the gifting department, and we set up an endowment, which is a contract. And so in this contract, I would specify what I want my funds to be used for. They can be used for equipment for the football team. They can be used for building a school library and putting my family's name on it. Or they can even be for what curriculum I want taught in the classroom. So what happens is the school agrees, but they agree to split the interest on the principal with my family for life, because endowments are set up in perpetuity. So they're set up to last forever. So let me explain that again. I donate the funds. So let's say I donate $100,000 to the university. I get a tax deduction for that donation. But in a contract, an endowment, the school and my family agrees to split the interest on that principal with my family for life. So let's say we agreed on 40% interest on the principal to come back to my family for life. So that means that the institution will receive 60% interest on that principal. Now, why would a university allow me to donate, receive a tax deduction, and then receive 40% of the interest on their principal in perpetuity? The reason why, ladies and gentlemen, is because these entities are foundations. That's how they generate their income, is through the donation process. Okay? That's how they generate income. They had no vested interest in the $100,000 I gave it to them. So whether they made 1% or whether they made 50%, they made a profit. That's why they would agree to pay me 40% on an annual basis with no problem, because they had no vested interest in the money. Now that $100,000 that I donated, the institution is not generating income off $100,000. They may have $100 million in their total endowment fund. So they're generating income on $100 million, not $100,000. Okay. So those of you who have attended colleges and universities, when you see all those families' names on those walls, a lot of those are not alumni. Those are families who have endowments with that institution. And if you go back and look at those walls, you're going to see so-and-so family trust, so-and-so charitable trust, so-and-so foundation. These are families and organizations that have endowments with that institution. Okay. Now, you heard me say that the second reason this information doesn't get to the public is because of the endowment process. What do I mean by that? You heard me earlier say I can actually control the curriculums that are being taught. Yes. This has been done since the 1900s. There's a document called the General Education Board. And what this document is, it's about 2 congressional investigations where Congress was investigating Carnegie, Rockefeller, and all these wealthy families. And basically, they said that these families these men not only control the industries that they're in, but they're rapidly being able to control the education and social services of the nation. That was in 1914. So let me give you a little history lesson. In 1903, the Rockefellers got an incorporating act from Congress to start creating schools, and they started in the South. When they start creating, they used an entity called the General Education Board. So the General Education Board started creating schools in the South. A few years go past, and Congress is seeing that these men were able to control the curriculums that were being taught, and every phase of the U.S. education system was under their control. They controlled the curriculums that were being taught. Okay? Their endowments were able to control these things. You know, people praise Rockefeller for giving away 82% of his wealth. He didn't give it away. He set up his wealth in perpetuity. He didn't give away 82% of his wealth. He set it up endowments where those funds will now come back to his family in perpetuity. When we set up endowments, ladies and gentlemen, through our foundation, it comes back tax-free. A foundation is an exempt entity. So now I'm generating income tax-free in perpetuity. See, these are tools that the elite use that they don't share with the public. Those of you who work in hospitals, next time you go to work, look at the donor wall in the hospital. You're going to see the same thing. So-and-so family trust, so-and-so charitable trust, so-and-so foundation. And you may even see a wing in the hospital named after a family. Let me ask you a question. If your name is on the wall in that hospital, did you think that you would have to wait in the waiting room? Absolutely not. Okay? So let's get back to the curriculums that were being taught. Not only do endowments control the curriculums that are being taught, they also control deanships and professorships and chairs. A lot of times, those positions are not paid for by the school. There is an organization or a family that are paying for those positions. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because you have to understand that the education system has always been another form of control. Always has been another form of control. When you look at that 1914 congressional investigation, Congress said these men not only control the industries that they're in, but they're rapidly being able to control the education and social services of the nation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there was a second congressional investigation in 1954. It was headed up by Carol Reese. It was called the Reese Commission. Carol Reese, she was out of Tennessee. Now, so there was a second congressional investigation with these families and their foundations. It said tampering with schools, tampering with the school systems. So in the second congressional investigation, Carol Reese said that anything she tried to get into the newspaper or on the news was slated, ridiculed, discredited. She called these families an intellectual cartel. She said that they were able to control every facet of the U.S. education system, from educational policy formation to the curriculums that were being taught to the Columbia Teachers Colleges, because these endowments were created by these wealthy men to create, well, as Rockefeller said it, he said, I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. Okay. And so, long story short, these men were captains of industry and they needed workers. Okay. A lot of the universities and cultural institutions that you know today are created by these wealthy families. Those of you who are familiar with Spelman College, historically African-American college, Spelman is Rockefeller's wife's family's last name. Those of you who are familiar with Morehouse College, historically African-American college, Morehouse was Rockefeller's pastor and business partner. Rockefeller also set up the University of Chicago in 1910, Marietta, Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt. He was an investor in Vanderbilt. I could keep going on. Before he passed, he set up 37 colleges and universities. These captains of industry wanted to be able to control the education system. And if you read that congressional investigation, they actually called it the fourth branch of government. because these men were operating free of any statutory entanglements. And for those of you who don't understand what that means, Congress said these men operate free of any state laws. Statutory means state. So they said these men operate free of any statutory entanglements. They operate free of any state laws. So I would like to ask you, what laws do you think that they're operating under? Because I would like to share something with you. There's another choice of law and jurisdiction that is not taught to the public that these so-called elite are operating through. That's why they're that's why they're able to operate in this manner and generate income in this manner and protect their assets in this manner and leave 100% of their wealth to their children generation after generation because they're structured in this manner. So back to the endowments. We're able to donate to colleges, universities, hospitals, cultural institutions, and museums and receive not only a tax deduction, but a lifetime source of income for doing so. The second, I think I'm going to share with you what we call private family banking. Some of you may have heard of this policy. Some people call it infinite banking. It's an insurance policy. It's actually 215 years old. It's an insurance policy that allows you, and they actually used to teach this in schools in the early 1900s as well. But there's an insurance policy that you're able to acquire. And once you purchase this policy, they have a contract where they guarantee you 4% compounded annually. Not only is it in a contract that's going to pay you 4% compounded annually on your insurance policy, you can borrow against it in the first 30 days with no penalty. If you don't pay it back, they just take it off the end of the death benefit because it has a death benefit attached to it as well. So you have an insurance policy that's generating 4% compounded annually. You can borrow against it with no penalty in the first 30 days, and it has a death benefit attached to it. Okay? Always put your dollar in a position to where it's going to generate income for you in 3 different ways. You make the money work for you. The movement of money is what makes money. So you have to put yourself in a position where money becomes perpetual. It's always moving. Okay? Now, this insurance policy, we call it private family banking because our clients operate through the policy just like a bank would. So what do I mean by that? Through our foundations that actually own the policies, we're able to loan money to different institutions and organizations. And we can set the terms of that agreement, of course, through contracts. So if I lend income to a company from my foundation, from the policy, remember, I'm borrowing money from the policy. So let's say you have a $100,000 policy. You're able to borrow 55% in the first 30 days. So I borrow $55,000. Now I loan that $55,000 out to another institution, whether it's a corporation or whatever type of entity. And we have an agreed upon rate. Let's say it's, 8 to 12% a year on that loan. Now, since I'm operating through my foundation and I'm operating through a contract, I will collect collateral just like a bank would with that loan. So if they default, of course, I have collateral. Now, once that loan is made, every time the borrower pays back that loan, it comes back to the foundation where they get a tax deduction for doing that because the foundation is a tax exempt entity. So how many more people want to borrow from you when every time they pay you back, they get a tax deduction for doing so? Okay. Now, these policies that are generating 4% compounded annually, these policies should be structured through your foundations. So when you're generating that 4% compounded annually, it's coming back to your foundation tax-free. See, ladies and gentlemen, what they don't teach the public is the way to become extremely wealthy, like Bezos and Musk and all of these other individuals, is because they understand how to operate in a tax-free environment. That's why they're wealthy. Okay? They understand how to operate in a tax-free environment, and that information is never taught to the public. Never taught to the public on how to operate in this manner. So you have to put yourself in the best possible position to be able to get your wealth to work for you. Now, I want to share some with you before I go to the 4th key of wealth. For those of you who have, just to share with you the information that is hidden from the public. For those of you who invest in the stock market, when you invest in the stock market, it's called IPOs or initial public offering. Do you know that if you have a certain amount of money, you can invest before that stock is even offered to the public? It's called founder stock. So it may come across our clients' desks at 10 to 15 cents a share. By the time it's offered to the public, it's $2 or $3 a share. So whether that stock goes up or down, our clients get rich. They could care less what the stock market does. As long as it opens, they get rich. Only individuals that are investing in IPOs or initial public offering are concerned about the stock going up. Our clients are not. Private placement accounts. Prior to about 10 years ago, we had an account for our clients that was doing 40% quarterly on their money. Took about 50 to 60 million, but it exists. So right now I'm just sharing with you what exists that they don't offer to the public. So that account, which is called a private placement account, you have to be invited to that platform, meet a certain income criteria, comes across your desk, very prevalent. If you make a certain amount of money, if you don't know that it exists. I'm just painting a picture for you right now. So you may ask yourself, well, Tony, how is it possible that a bank could pay someone 40% quarterly? Well, you have to understand that the bank is the most corrupt system on earth. They don't have any money. They make money off a system called fractional reserve banking. What does that mean? That means that when you put your money in the bank, they're only allowed, it was 10%, then it went to 8%, now it's 0. Okay, in reserve. So they can go to the Federal Reserve, borrow 10 times against that amount and loan it out and charge interest on it. That's how a bank makes money. Okay, it takes your funds, goes to the Federal Reserve, and it can borrow 10 times against that amount, loan it out and charge interest on it. So why couldn't the bank pay my client 40% quarterly on $50 million, 40% quarterly? Because the bank had no vested interest in it. He allowed them to utilize those funds. He had no vested interest in the money. Most people can barely get 1% on a bank, on a bank account. These individuals are generating 40% quarterly, 50% a year if you have a certain amount of money. What I'm doing is painting a picture for you. I'm sharing with you what exists. So you will understand that there's a totally different set of financial information that exists that they do not offer to the public. Okay? Same thing with the endowment process. Now, what do all these three institutions have in common? They're all permanent industries. You have the charitable industry, you have the loan industry, and you have the investment industry. These are permanent industries. There's always going to be a need for charity. The key is get enough money out of that industry to live off of that is equal to or greater than what your business is earning. This is the key. It's called a run rate. A run rate is how you separate your personal wealth from your business. 99% of the public has never been taught that concept before. How do you separate your personal wealth from your business? These three structures that I just shared with you has nothing to do with a business. So my funds are in permanent industries that will continue to generate income for me. So whatever my income my business is generating, I'm generating that income in my business and putting it into a permanent industry. So if my business fails, it will never affect my family's standard of living because it's not based upon a business or a job. It's in a permanent industry. The key is to understand how to get money into that industry and get enough out of it to live off of that is equal to or greater than what your business is earning. And for those of you, when I shared with you about endowments, you don't have to be wealthy to set up an endowment. They start as little as $10,000, 4% annually. Okay, Boys and Girls Club, Texas A&M, University of North Texas, the endowments start as low as $10,000. Now, of course, you can't go to Harvard or Yale and set up a $10,000 endowment. It doesn't exist. They have a threshold. Okay, but when you see John Paulson giving $350 million to Harvard Engineering Department, he's not doing that out of the kindness of his heart. He's getting a tax deduction up front and receiving a lifetime source of income on the back end. So when you see these huge endowments, ladies and gentlemen, these families are setting up their wealth in perpetuity. That's what they're doing. Okay? So that's the third key to wealth. How do you get your wealth to work for you? You have to put it in a position to where it will work for you. But remember, generating income doesn't mean anything if you're not in the correct tax position. Generating income and being in a correct tax position doesn't mean anything if those assets are not protected. Now, to the fourth key to wealth. The fourth key to wealth is, how do I pass this wealth on? How's this wealth passed on from one generation to the next? So if you want to know how the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and you want to understand how these families became wealthy, this is the tool that they used. This particular type of trust structure. There's 80 different type of legally recognized trusts. This is the only one that's considered a federal organization and not a state-created entity. Okay? So if you are the trustees of this particular type of trust, and you've been generating assets, your whole life, generating assets through business or what have you, investments, what have you, and all your assets are in your family trust. And let's say that you and your wife, you guys pass on, and your children are listed as successor trustees. Now your children take over the trust. Now, when your children take over the trust, there's no death tax, there's no probate tax, there's no inheritance tax, and there's no lawyer fees. So you just passed 100% of what you spent your life building to the next generation with no taxation due to your estate. Why? Because there was never an ownership change. The trustees controlled the assets. They did not own them. The trust owns the asset. The trust doesn't die. Only we suffer that fate. So since the trust doesn't die, and the trustees die, the successor trustees take over. There's no ownership change. There's no tax consequence. So that's how those families pass wealth from one generation to the next with no taxation due to their estate. But guess what happens to you, ladies and gentlemen? If you don't have a plan, they have a plan for you. This is the reason why half or 2/3 of family businesses fail. Well, over half of family businesses and family estates don't make it from one generation to the next. The reason they don't make it is because of the tax position that they're being put in. They're getting hit with death tax, probate tax, inheritance tax act. All these things kill family businesses and family estates. This is the reason why most family businesses and estates do not make it to the second generation. And this was done purposely. From 1913 to 1916, these were the laws that were passed. The Income Tax Act, the Death Tax Act, Probate Tax Act, Inheritance Tax Act. Between 1913 and 1916, these acts were put in place to strip your families of their wealth. But the elite had a tool. They had a tool to protect them from the laws that they were passing. They created another person that wasn't under those set of rules. You did hear, I did say that correctly. They created another person. What do I mean by that? This particular type of trust is considered a separate and distinct taxable person. So this person files a different tax form. This person can generate income, take his lawfully allowed tax deductions, and then move the income and tax liability to its beneficiary. Let's pass in the tax liability. You and I can't do that. You and I can't personally generate income, take our deductions, and then move it. See, they created a tool to protect them from the laws that they were passing. Okay? That tax form has been here since the IRS has been here. There's nothing new about it. Individuals that make a certain income criteria, they understand how to operate through that particular type of structure. And once again, you don't have to be a Goldwater or a Rockefeller to be able to access this structure. Not now you don't. There was a time where you had to meet a certain income criteria, but not anymore. Through our partnerships with other foundations and organizations, we're able to bring that information to the public. That's our goal, is to educate the public. Whether you participate in this or not, it'll never affect my family's standard of living because it's not based upon a business. It's in permanent industries. And you should be structured that way as well. Okay? So I'm going to recap the 4 keys to wealth. And after that recap, I'll open it up for questions. But let me share this with you. The first key to wealth is, how do I put my wealth in the correct tax position? The second key to wealth is, how do I protect that wealth? The third key to wealth is, how do I get that wealth to work for me? And the fourth key to wealth is, how do I pass that wealth on? If those 4 keys are not put in place, you will lose any amount of wealth as quickly as you gained it. One more thing before I open it up for questions, I have to share this with you because a lot of families are falling by the wayside because they don't understand this concept that I'm going to share with you. Wealthy individuals do not save paper money. I want to be very clear about what I just said. Our clients do not save paper money. Paper money is a debt-incurring instrument. It does not get more valuable. It depreciates every year. So why are you saving in a depreciating asset? At the top of your dollar, it says exactly what it is. It says Federal Reserve note. A note is an IOU. It's a promise to pay. They're telling you exactly what it is. When wealthy people save, they save in tangible assets: gold, silver, platinum, collectible art, collectible cars, diamonds, emeralds, pearls, land, things that the longer you keep them, the more valuable they become. That's where true wealth is held. It's not held in any paper currency. Paper currency is a debt incurring instrument. Okay? You need an asset that's going to stay ahead of the rate of inflation, that's going to maintain its purchasing power, and the longer you keep it, the more valuable it's going to become. That's where true wealth is held. It's not held in any paper currency. You're only supposed to keep enough money in your bank account for operating purposes. In any other excess income or assets that you have, they should be in tangible form or liquid form, where you can turn them into cash at any time. There's another element to this, ladies and gentlemen. The other element to this is in October of 2015, they passed the bank bail-in rules. So when and most individuals, even people that work at banks, have no clue what I'm going to share with you. They passed the bank bail-in rules in 2015. In 2008, everyone knows the recession, they bailed the banks out. It's called the bailout. Bailed the banks out. Why do they have to bail the banks out? Because all your 401ks and your IRAs and your stocks, the bottom was, in real estate, bottom was falling out of all those markets. But what happened at that time? Gold and silver went up. Gold went up 300%. Silver went up 300%. Platinum went up 300%. So in a recession, real money always shines, always stays ahead of a rate of inflation, always maintains its purchasing power. So there's a difference between investing in gold and silver and saving gold and silver. We save gold and silver. We don't invest in gold and silver. That is insurance for our paper money. So yes, in 2008, my precious metals portfolio went up over 1,000% in a recession. Why? A recession is a wealth transfer, ladies and gentlemen. It is a wealth transfer. What do I mean by that? So when the bottom was falling out of the real estate market, individuals that have this knowledge make so much money by holding precious metals that when the bottom fell out of the real estate market, all they did was go buy up all the real estate at pennies on the dollar. So in 2012, when the market rebounded, they got rich all over again. A wealth transfer. Please listen to what I'm sharing with you. Okay? Bring some type of tangible asset into your household. Paper money is just to service your debts. This is information that they do not teach the public because they want to keep the public in servitude. That's why. Okay? So thank you all. If there's any questions.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure, we'll be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. This is Lisa Woods.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
The Q&A host for the evening. Everyone, we have been given some awesome information. Thank you so much, Mr. Franklin, for all you've given us. You certainly opened my eyes to so many things, and I'm quite sure everyone on this call tonight has really learned a lot and are wanting to learn more about what you are offering here and what you are teaching us. So we have some hands that are arising. Everyone, please be mindful of our host tonight, our presenter, that, time constraints here. We are at a late hour. So we will take your hands, but please keep your questions to one, maybe two-part. And let's not go past that because I would have to cut you off. Everyone needs a chance to be able to ask their questions. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Cece, you're up first.
Thank you so much for this information, Mr. Franklin. This was priceless. So we definitely appreciate you coming to talk to us on this lovely evening, and we cannot wait to hear more. I know I speak for everybody by saying that. But my question is, on the 4 Keys to Wealth, when you was telling us about this particular trust, I did not hear you say the name of this trust.
The name of the trust, it's a complex trust. I'll put it to you that way. That it's a tax term, but that's how it's looked at by the IRS is a complex trust. And I'll kind of give you guys the what does that mean? That is a tax term. So I don't care what kind of trust you have. The IRS only taxes trust 3 ways. It's either taxed as a grantor trust. That means that the person that creates it, if it generates income, is taxed to them personally. Or it's taxed as a simple trust. What is simple? Simple means that it's a trust that generates income through the year. And at the end of the year, all of the income has to be dispersed to the beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries are taxed on that income, whether they're people or entities. We are classified as a complex trust. What does that mean? That means that the trust can be a pass-through, a tax-paying entity. So the trustees are allowed to pass the income through, or they can keep the income and the trust can pay tax on the income. Now, the difference is the complex trust can give to charity, to which these other entities, those other trusts cannot. So it's tax terms, a complex trust. Now, but it's really a contract. And what I mean by that is that the legal definition of a trust is a 3-party contract, the constitutional definition. The state definitions of a trust is not a contract. They do that for a very specific purpose. And what I mean by that is that when you create those entities within the state, of course, the state has the rule of law, but they're not contracts. They're not structured in contract form. That's why they're called agreements. They're called trust agree. They're really a trust agreement and not a contract. So what's the difference? The reason why one is called an agreement and one is called a contract is because all the elements of a contract have to be there for something to be considered a contract. All the elements have to be there. Okay, consideration, acceptance, remedy, and recourse, all those things have to be there for it to be considered a contract. In an agreement, those things do not have to be there. That's why one is called an agreement and one is called a contract. For those of you who understand contracts, you understand that contracts are the most powerful tools that exist. There is nothing more powerful than a contract. Contracts control people and countries. What do I mean? Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. No state shall pass any law that would impair the obligation of contracts. No state. See, the elite understand how to operate their businesses and their family estates in contract form, not under some state authority, but contract form. So if any of you guys on the call have ever watched Judge Judy or the Judge Show, and there's a contract dispute, the first thing the judge says is, let me see the contract. Why? The contract is the law. Okay? So the elite understand how to create law in their businesses and their family estates in contract form. That information is not shared with the public. And so when it comes to the nomenclature, which just means the name, when it comes to the name of it, that's really of no avail. It's about how it's structured. It is the key to this. It's how this entity is structured allows it to operate in this manner. So when you're talking about a different type of trust or state-created entity, it cannot operate like I'm sharing with you because there's rules in the state that prohibit that. This is not the same type of entity. Okay?
Okay, and the second part of that question of the complex trust, you said it is, I didn't catch it properly, so correct me where I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong somewhere here. You said it is a separate and distinct entity or person that files its own tax return?
Taxable person. Yep, taxable person. If it has its own tax, well, a corporation is too. If you look up look up corporation personhood. When you look it up, a corporation is considered a person. And so that's why it can be sued or sue in its own name. This trust can too. It can be sued or it can sue in its own name, files its own tax forms. It's considered a person. With a corporation, it's called corporate personhood. With a trust, it's called a separate and distinct taxable person. That's Title 26 of the U.S. Code. And so it's a different type of structure. And they don't want to offer this structure to the public because they don't want you to be able to protect your assets. I'm just being honest with you.
Right.
They don't like that information in the public because, you know, we walk around. I could care less about any obscure litigation. I own 7 companies. I control 7 companies. So if there's litigation in any one of my companies, there's only enough money in the bank account for operating purposes. All of my assets are titled. All the assets that I control are titled in other trusts. You'll never find them, ever. Okay, so that's the key to being able to protect yourself, because the system is set up for you to fail. The system is literally set up for you to fail, because the system that we operate through, being able to protect our assets, and not only that, but from a tax perspective, we're able to control it. That's why when they talk about passing all these laws, we're just laughing, because they're never going to change the laws that protect their multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar estates. It's not going to happen. And it's another reason it can't happen. It's because this stuff is based on contract law. And for those of you on the call who don't understand this, every state, look this up when you get a chance. Every state in the United States is under the common law of England, except for Louisiana, because the French owned Louisiana at that time. There's other choices of law and jurisdiction that they don't teach in schools, and they are never teach in colleges or universities or to the public. So when you heard me share with you earlier that in that congressional investigation in 1914, where Congress was investigating Carnegie and Rockefeller and the other wealthy families, they said that these families and men operate free of any state laws, free of any statutory entanglements. So what laws are they operating under? There's different jurisdictions and choices of law that they do not share with the public. Okay, it's not available.
Okay, we need to move to the second. We have a lot of hands, so we need to move to the next person, please. So let's go ahead and, Angela, let us get your question, please.
Thank you. My question actually was similar to Cece's, but now that you've answered that, how do we get this particular trust?
You can contact our organization. You can get with Saul, and he'll get you our information. And you can just request a questionnaire. We have a questionnaire that you fill out. It gives us a preview into how to properly structure you, whether you have a business or you don't, or maybe you're a W-2 wage earner. There's something else, and I'm glad you asked that question. So for those of you on the call who think, okay, well, this is not for me because I don't have a business, let me share this with you. Those of you on the call that are W-2 wage earners, our private family foundation, this is not a public charity. So for those of you on the call that are familiar with 501c3s, 501c3 is not an entity. It's a letter of acceptance. You have different entities that have that letter. Okay. The Boys and Girls Club is a corporation that has that letter. The National Heart Association is an association that has that letter. The PGA has that letter. The National Hockey League has that letter. The NFL had that letter prior to 2016. So when I say 501c3, they're not the same. A foundation, our private family foundation, is a trust. Foundations can be corporations, they can be partnerships, they can be associations, and they can also be trusts. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a private family foundation. It is not a public charity. So what is the difference? A public charity is considered a it's considered an operating foundation. The private family foundation is considered a grant-making, non-operating foundation. And so this particular entity, the reason why you don't hear about how much money Bill Gates has anymore, they have to estimate his wealth, is because all the shares of Microsoft are owned by the foundation. They're not owned by Bill and Melinda. So when Bill and Melinda went through the divorce, the reason you didn't hear anything about who received what assets is because Bill and Melinda didn't own any of the assets. Their trust did. And so when Bill and Melinda got a divorce, they just had to figure out who was going to control what asset. It can never go through the court system because they don't own it. The foundation owns the assets, not them personally.
So
okay?
the next
and
part
so
of my...
through our private...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So through the Private Family Foundation, if you're a W-2 wage earner, you are allowed to donate 30% on an annual basis to the private family foundation. So if you have a private family foundation, you make $100,000 a year, you can donate 30, you're only taxed on 70. So every year you can make a $30,000 charitable contribution to your private family foundation. So you just took it out of your right pocket and put it in your left. Now, the foundation is allowed to own 20% of a business. Yes, you did hear me correctly. It's an exempt entity that is allowed to own 20% of a business. Not more than 20%, but it can own 20% of 10 companies. We can buy and sell real estate through our foundation with no 1031 exchange and no capital gains. You did hear me correctly. So this is a different type of structure, and they don't offer these structures to the public. They offer the public charities, not private family foundations. The last time we checked, there were only a little bit over 80,000 private family foundations in the United States, and there's 350 million people. So that means that less than 1% of the population even know or have a private family foundation. So those of you that are W-2 wage earners, you can offset your taxable liability by 30% on an annual basis by donating to the private family foundation. Then you can invest those funds through the foundation and generate those funds tax-free.
Okay, so should we have an association, a trust, and all of these other things that we've been learning about? A combination of everything?
I have no idea what you've been learning.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea what you've been learning about. So okay. I'm just speaking from the structures that we operate through.
Thank you. I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone, we're going to keep these questions down to one part because we're going a little bit over time. We have a lot of hands to go, and we want to give everybody an opportunity to get their question in. So, Dr. Cynthia, it's your turn for your question.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I first of all want to thank you, Tony, for what you presented. I tell you, I'm blown away. And I did work in the banking industry, not for a very long time. And I do have had investments for quite some time, but I never knew, not even maybe 1% of what I only know 1% of what you said. So, I really thank you so much. I will be looking forward to getting your information, so I will be able to contact you. But one of the concerns that I had was what you had said, well, not concerns, the issue was in reference to the IRS, and I don't know which code it is. It's the states that we can give, we're able to donate, I think it was 60% of our salary. I don't know if the salary also includes let's say people who are on pensions and Social Security. That's how they're making theirs. So how would a person who is at that stage of life working on either two ways, it would be working as a regular employee with a W-2 or they are retired, how can they protect what they have?
Great question. And when it's AGI, so it's adjusted gross income. That can be donated to the private family foundation for a W-2 wage earner. For those of you that have, let's say you have funds in your bank currently that are after-tax dollars. So now I'm going to share with you after-tax dollars. So what do you do with after-tax? How is after-tax dollars considered placing those assets into a trust? Well, if they're after-tax dollars and they go into the trust, it is now an asset of the trust. That's not considered income in the trust because those are after-tax dollars. So if you have, $100,000 in your bank account and you want to protect it from creditors and litigation, you place it into your family trust account. And now that family trust account is owned by the family trust, not by you personally. You have control over it, but you don't have any ownership. So if someone were to sue you, those assets are not acquirable because they're not titled, of course, in your name. You have control, but no ownership. So any assets that you own, let's say you own your home outright. What you would do is quick claim deed the home to the trust, go to the county recorder's office, record the property in the name of the trust. Now, if somebody sues you and those attorneys, you're in a discovery phase and they're looking up your assets, it's not going to come up in your personal name. Okay. So whatever's in your personal name you're liable for, any type of obscure litigation or creditors may be coming after you. So placing those assets into the trust irrevocably. And for those of you who don't understand what irrevocable means, a lot of people have a misconception about what that means. Irrevocable means that when the asset is transferred irrevocable, it's only irrevocable to the creators of the trust, not to the trustees. And you can be a trustee. Okay, so trusteeship is created. It's an office that is created by the parties at arm's length. So when you become a trustee, you sign your name with TTEE behind your name, or T in parentheses. That means that I'm operating as the trustee. I'm in the office of trustee. So that's the person that I'm operating as. I'm not operating as me personally, but I'm operating in the office of trustee. Now, so to protect your assets, make sure any assets that you own, you place them into your family trust irrevocably if they're not high risk. So for those of you on the call who have rental properties, those are what we consider in our field high risk. Why is a rental property high risk? Let's say there's faulty wiring in a home and the house catches on fire and somebody gets hurt and they sue the owner. If you're the owner, everything that you own is at risk. But if the trust is the owner, the only thing in that trust is that property and an insurance policy. Now that's all they have access to. Now they can't access your personal bank accounts, the trust bank accounts, whatever other assets that you own and control. Okay. And so any asset can be transferred into the trust, can be conveyed into the trust to protect that asset. Now, as far as income, the trust can receive income. Okay. It can receive income as a pass-through, it can be a member of an LLC and receive income that way, or it can receive income directly. Legacy Management Group, our company, is a trust. It's not a corporation. It's not a partnership, not an association. It is a trust. Okay. And so that entity can generate income. Now, irrevocable trust are taxed at the highest rate. This is how they keep it out of the public eye. When you go to your CPAs and your tax attorneys and you tell them that you want to operate through an irrevocable trust, they're going to laugh you out the room because it's taxed at 37.6. But what they don't understand is that when that entity generates income, after it takes those lawfully allowed tax deductions, it can move the income and tax liability to the beneficiary, thus passing the tax obligation, where you and I cannot do that. Okay, so there's benefits to being able to operate through this particular structure. But to get back to your question, any assets that you own, transfer them irrevocably to this particular type of trust. That way, anyone looking up, though now those assets are titled in the name of the trust. So if there's any type of litigation or creditors, they will never be able to acquire those assets because they don't belong to you. So they can't sue you and take the assets. Now, can the trust be sued? Absolutely. It's a legal entity. The key here is to manage liability. So you make sure that if I'm dealing with the public, I'm making sure that that trust that is operating with the public only has enough money in the bank account for operating purposes. Any of my other personal assets is held in a separate trust that is not dealing with the public at all.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Carmen, it's your turn. One question, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. I would like to know about the topic of gold. I understand that you can purchase bullion, coins, ETFs. What would be the recommendation? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Tony can give that information out. But I would like to know what would be the most secure way to invest large sums of money at this point in time, or in those types of tangible assets.
Okay, great question. When it comes to investing in gold and silver, and remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing with you how we're structured. So let me be clear about that. I'm just sharing with you, and I'm not a tax professional. I'm not an attorney. So what I'm sharing with you is how I'm structured and how we structure clients. Okay, let me get that out the way. So now, when it comes to gold and silver, if you don't physically hold it, you don't own it. And so let me explain why I said that. In 2008, when gold and silver went up over 300%, and platinum and palladium and rhodium, when all those metals went up 300%, Bear Stearns, the reason why Bear Stearns went out of business is because the public that was investing in notes, the public was buying gold notes, so they didn't physically have it. So the reason why Bear Stearns went out of business is because when people were calling in those notes, they didn't have the physical gold and silver. They didn't physically have it. They were just selling notes. So never invest in gold and silver notes. If you don't physically hold it, you do not own it. Okay? Let me be very clear about that. If you don't physically own it, you do not own it. I'm sorry, physically hold it, you do not own it. There's a lot of metals to get into. Bullion, American silver eagles and gold eagles and platinum eagles, that's what we acquire. There's a reason we acquire those metals. In 1933, there was a Gold Confiscation Act in 1933. So for those of you who don't understand what that means, the government said everybody has to turn over their gold, and it was a $10,000 fine, 10 years in jail. Now, if you didn't turn over your gold. Now, what happened was our government wanted to manipulate the purchasing power of the dollar. Well, the only way to manipulate it was to take away the gold and silver backing from the dollar. Once the gold and silver backing was taken away from the dollar, that's what set inflation in motion. So it took more dollars for the same goods and services. So, ladies and gentlemen, my grandmother used to tell me a story about purchasing gas for 17 cents a gallon. Well, at that time, the dollar was worth 100 pennies. Today, the dollar fluctuates between 2 to 4 cents. So gas is not almost $4 or $5 a gallon because it's 2021. It's that your dollar is depreciating. Now, I'm saying all that to say this. So it was actually illegal to properly hoard gold and silver up to 1984 when the IRS passed legislation saying the only coins that are not confiscatable were numismatic. So remember, it was on the books that the coins were still confiscatable up to 1984. So in 1984, the U.S. government created the American Gold and Silver Eagle Coin Program. This coin program, this is the IRAs and the 401ks for the wealthy. Now, what happened was they knew that the wealthy would not purchase in this program if the wealthy knew that the coins were still confiscatable. So millions of dollars was leaving the United States going to other countries to purchase gold and silver. When the government seen this exodus of money leaving the country, in 1984, they created the American Gold and Eagle Silver Coin Program to keep the money here. Well, when they created that program, the IRS said the only coins that are not confiscatable are numismatic. Numismatic means 15% more than the face value. So when you look at a American Silver Eagle coin, the face value is $1. Can you purchase it for $1? Absolutely not. That's what numismatic is. So that's what the elite acquire because they're supposedly not confiscatable. Okay? So we purchase American Eagles, gold, silver, platinum. Now, that's considered legal tender. So everywhere in the world, every country has their own legal tender coins. China has the panda bear. Canada has the maple leaf. Africa has the Krugerrand. You have the Philharmonic in Austria. So every country has their own what's considered real currency. That means that I can take those coins to that country and turn them into currency at any time. And so we advise, I'm not going to say we advise, our clients and myself, we acquire American Eagles. Okay, and maple leaves, any other legal tender coin we acquire. Now, that's not to say that rounds are not valuable because they are worth their weight in gold or silver or whatever, but they're not considered legal tender. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Jen Coin, you're next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa. I thought I changed my name to Christine. Hi. Quick question. With the new laws that they just put in for cryptocurrency, I kind of had a question to you since everything now, instead of it being DeFi, now they want to make it all centralized. So is your entity able to, I guess, protect cryptocurrency, or is that something that you just don't feel is necessary to touch?
Our entity can own any asset, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's stocks, bonds, gold, silver, land, The law actually says that a trust can do anything a person can do except vote. This particular type of trust. Other trusts are different. Remember, there's 80 different type of legally recognized trusts. But yes, this trust absolutely can own cryptocurrency. Absolutely, it can have brokerage accounts. Money market accounts. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to end the Q&A with Tab Ballard. So when we get to that name, we're no longer taking any more hands because we're just still have a lot ahead to cover. Okay, so next we have Anthony. You're up. Anthony, you're next. Okay.
Sorry about that. I got you.
All right.
Yeah. Hello, Tony. How are you?
I'm excellent. Yourself?
Great. Hey, Tony, my brother has been bending my ear. It's not so much of a question, it's more of a comment. He's been bending my ear about a lot of what you've been saying over the last year. And I'm sure he would be pretty proud. He's probably smiling from ear to ear right now. I'm extremely impressed, not only with what he knows, but your acumen as well. So if it's okay with you, me and my brother will be contacting you to bend your ear as well. Thank you for the presentation. Excellent.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. All right, Talitha. Talitha, you can unmute your mic. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for all you've been talking about. But you was talking about the 4 keys to wealth, and I was writing so slow. So can you give me that again, please?
Yes, ma'am. The first key to wealth is how do you put your wealth in the correct tax position? So that's the first key to wealth. How do you put your wealth in the correct tax position? The second key to wealth is how do you protect that wealth? The third key to wealth is how do I get that wealth to work for me? And the fourth key to wealth is how do I pass that wealth on?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Tony.
I really appreciate the information that you're giving up. My question is, you said too in this trust to only put enough money in this trust to operate. So if we do that, can I use this trust in association with an association? Can I use this trust jointly with association, or I can't?
I mean, it's a separate legal entity, but I mean, it can receive income. It can disperse income only to its beneficiaries. So
Right.
It depends on how you're trying to operate. What are you trying to accomplish? I would have to know that first before I can give you an answer to that. So the first thing I would have to know is what are you trying to accomplish, and then I'll be able to put a plan together and say yes, where you can operate in this manner, or what would be best for you. So, but this trust is a legal entity. It can generate income. It can pay contractors. It can be members of other entities. So, if it wants to be a member of an LLC or an association, it can be a member. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have David. David, unmute your mic.
Okay, you there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. One more question about the gold issue. If you have a considerable amount of, you'd say, fashion jewelry and whatnot in there, is it better to produce it into the coins as well?
I believe so, just because they're legal tender. But remember, there's going to always be worth their weight. So it's going to always be worth its weight. I personally like the coins better. And the reason why is because on the books it's not confiscatable. So that's why I personally like, and it's legal tender. So wherever country I'm in, something happens, I always keep some gold coins, and all my kids do as well. We always have gold coins on us. So if something happens, whatever country they're in, if there was no currency or no paper money, they can always have some type of medium of exchange.
Is that set up and protected the same way?
You said again, I couldn't hear you.
Did you set that up to be protected the same way?
Oh, absolutely. We don't own anything. All the gold and silver is purchased and is owned by the trust structures or the foundation.
Okay.
It owns all the assets. Yeah, absolutely. All the investments accounts, insurance policies, everything is owned by the trust structures.
Very good. Thank you, sir. It was great. I enjoyed every bit of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we have been hearing some very, very valuable and awesome information. So once again, thank you, Mr. Franklin, for that. Moving on to the next person, Tasha. Okay, Tasha's out. Jack, you're next.
Hello, yeah. Tony, this is Jack. Thanks for great information. And I got one question for you, though.
Okay.
With the 1041 form that you were required to file, is there a requirement to itemize it just like other trusts? You do itemized deductions?
No. If you look on the 1041 tax form, there's no line there for itemized deductions. And for everyone on the call, this is critical for you to understand. So why? Why on every other structure, the state is saying, 50% for meals and entertainment? They're telling you what you can deduct. It's not the same with the trust. There's no itemized deductions. They ask you for the total number of deductions. You don't have any. And let me share with you why why there's no cap or they don't have any control over that. It's because if your trust is a contract, they can't impede on the contract, whether it's a government or a state or an individual. The contract is binding. So if your trust is a contract and you have a contractual obligation with an individual or the trustees or whoever, that contract is binding. So on the 1041 tax form that the trust files, there's no itemized deductions. Actually, it just has income and deductions. That's it. So that's another benefit of operating through that entity, that there are no itemized deductions on the 1041 tax form. Okay, you don't have to itemize anything. It's just a total number of expenses. They have no idea what my contract says. Okay, and so they don't have any jurisdiction over it either, because it's a contract. That's the difference between operating through this particular type of structure and other structures that are not created in this manner, is because the state or where it's created has the rule of law, where in our entities is strictly contract based. Okay, and it's an entity. Let me give you an example so I can make this make sense. When you have an LLC, the LLC can be taxed as a partnership or a corporation. Same thing for our contract trust. It can be taxed. We choose to be taxed as a complex trust because the legal definition of a trust is a three-party contract. So our contract, the only time it falls under trust law is the way that it's taxed and how the income is dispersed. For all of the purposes, it is a contract. Same thing with an LLC. It's an LLC. The LLC is not taxed until the income is dispersed. So the LLC, it's the same difference. Is that you have an LLC, but it can be taxed as a partnership or a corporation. It's choosing how it wants to pay. Our trust is the same. It's a contract, and it's choosing to be in trust form and file taxes as a complex trust. Okay, but to answer your question, Jack, absolutely, there is no itemized deductions on the 1041 tax form.
Okay, thank you. All right, Carol, you're next.
Yes, hi, good evening. Great information. Thank you so much. Earlier, you were speaking about an insurance policy that earns 4% compounding interest annually with a death benefit, and you can borrow from that in the first 30 days. Is there
Correct.
a name to that policy?
Well, we call it private family banking. Some people call it infinite banking.
Gotcha.
Some people call it goes by infinite banking. Now, this is a whole life policy. So for those of you that are on the call to say, well, I have pre-existing conditions, I might not be able to qualify for that policy. Well, you need to understand that that policy can be on your children, your grandchildren, your staff, your parents. So the policy doesn't have to be on you personally. It can be on your staff, on your, like I said, children, grandchildren. So the policies can be on any individual that is willing to take that test for you. Absolutely. And so yeah, you can have policies on whoever is agreeable to that. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Okay, AC, unmute your mic.
Okay, thank you, Tony, for your knowledge. My question is pretty premature. I hadn't been on these calls long, but how do you gain access to these trusts like without your name being on? I mean, surely you're not using your identification, but how do you gain access to move trusts? I mean, yeah, through your company, but when you, I don't know how just having access to them, period. Like,
okay, great question. So when you set up these particular type of entities, you are listed as the trustee. The reason that that's critical is because with an irrevocable trust, this is not a revocable trust. So the difference is in an irrevocable trust, once assets are in that irrevocable trust, they're owned by the structure correctly. So it's owned by trust, it's not owned by you personally. And so the difference is that, yes, you're the trustee, but you don't have any ownership. But do you have access to the funds? Absolutely. The trust is not a living, breathing person. You are to the funds. Now, there are contractual obligations and allowances that are in these entities that will allow you to be able to have clothing allowance, food allowance, vehicle allowance, things of that sort, as a part of your contractual obligation to manage the company, because it's a separate legal entity. It would be the same as if you worked for me and I say, hey, we do presentations, so I'm gonna give you a suit allowance. That would be a deduction for me as a business owner. It's the same thing with the trust because it's a separate legal entity. So it is allowed to operate in that manner. Actually, I'm looking for the definition. So I want to read this to you, what the office of trustee means. And I think this will make more sense when I share this with you. So let me go here. Okay. It says, when property is conveyed into a contract trust, it must be fixed and irrevocable. Thus, the creator may be legally recognized as a different person,
Okay, there it is.
even when he or she may be the same human being.
Right.
Trusteeship is a position created by parties at arm's length. And when established, it is an office to be occupied by any qualified person. That's Becker, Collector of Internal Revenue Service versus St. Louis Union Trust Company. Okay, so when you're the trustee and those assets and you convey those assets to the trust, once you become a trustee, the law says that the creator may be legally recognized as a different person, even when he or she may be the same human being. Trusteeship is a position created by parties at arm's length, and when established, it is an office to be occupied by any qualified person.
So it could just be a made-up name with trustee on the end.
No. It has to be your name and trustee. No, it can't be a made-up name.
Okay.
No, your name. Yeah,
okay.
Your name with trustee behind it. Yes.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Bev. Unmute your mic, please.
Thank you so much. This is such an honor. I have a simple question probably for you. I have currently in my name, separate property trust, the house that I live in. It is in the name of my trust, separate property trust. Can I quit claim this existing house into the complex trust that I will be establishing?
So let me ask you this question: who are the trustees in this trust that the house is in? Who are the trustees?
I am.
Okay, you're the trustee. It's a revocable trust, like a living trust.
It's. Ooh, I'll have to find that out. I'm embarrassed. I don't know. My husband passed, so we had our own separate property trust.
Gotcha. If you're the trustee, you can transfer that asset wherever you choose. So if you wanted to convey that asset to another entity, whether it's a trust, a corporation, or whatever, you have the right to do that.
So that's what you meant by move it from your left pocket to your right pocket.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Tab, you're next.
Yes, sir. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can.
Great and awesome information. I don't really have a question so much. It's just like everyone is saying, this is just some awesome information because I've been into gold and silver for about 4 years now, and I actually just got into numismatic this year. And I've been trying to explain to people, the value of having numismatic compared to just silver eagles and gold and whatnot. But this has been a phenomenal call. And like you said, we don't want the value of our dollars regular depreciating. So we want to change some of that into gold. Like I said, I'm not being advising anyone, but that's just wise because the dollar is regular declining. So awesome presentation. Thank you. I just want to let you know that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that concludes our Q&A session. Again, thank you so much for presentation. So much. And I would want to get with you, Will. So, but anyway, we'll go ahead and call. You take them back to you.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Tony, you is the man. You the man. Tony, look, one question I have for you. Now, to open this trust, do I need to get my EIN number, or will you furnish that EIN number?
No, we provide that for our clients because this is a federal organization, so it's a little bit different. So we want to make sure that we do it correctly. So we acquire those for our clients.
That's what I need to know. Thank you, Tony. I'll be getting with you next week to go over some things. Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Appreciate you, Tony. You did a great job, man.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I got to get you back. So thank you, everyone. I think we are just about done for the night. I'm not gonna keep everybody on here long. I can't find anyone anyway. So I'm just go to a few of my leaders, see if they have anything to say. Paula.
Whew, I am completely overwhelmed. This has just been amazing, just incredible information. It's going to take me at least 2 or 3 listens to this recording, Mr. Franklin, to try and absorb just even a fraction of what you have shared this evening. The information has just been invaluable. And thank you so much for taking the time to present to our group. This is just, you've given us a wealth of information.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Darla. Francesca.
Oh my goodness, I'm about to come out of my seat. All the information was just, oh my gosh, phenomenal. Thank you so much, and look forward to doing business with you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes. Okay. I can't see any other leaders. If any other leaders on, you got unmute your mic. Thought I seen Lisa Vaughn on, not for sure. So, but if not,
is there a link or a website or something that we can have access to?
Oh yes. Sal, did you want to provide that, or would you like me to?
Yes, Tony. You give me. I'll get with you, and just give me that, and I'll post it in my chat. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Group chat.
And I just want to share something before we end this call. You know, this information that I'm sharing with you, you know, the public was never supposed to have this information. And so utilize it. Share it within your family. This information is not for you, it's for your children. It's for the next generation to educate them and to move their family forward. I want to share something with you. When we used to counsel wealthy families, their children learned what I just shared with you at 12 years old. So when the children became 12, we taught them how to take over the family estate at 12, the companies, the businesses. And so this information is invaluable because the information was never supposed to be in the public. And not only through our organization or our foundation, but through other partnering foundations, we're able to bring this information to the public where the public can actually have access to it without meeting a certain income criteria or qualifications. So it's not just our particular organization. There's other organizations that we partner with that allow us to be able to share the information with the public and the public to have access to it. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Tony, like I say, you the man. Tell y'all people, look, PMC, we bring the best of the best. So we're going to continue to bring the best of the best. Tony, we got to get you back on here, Tony.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you again. Tomorrow night, we'll have another call tomorrow night. Health, about your health to receive your wealth. Health to receive your wealth. Okay? So I'm going to end it right there. And I know everyone's probably tired, ready to go, get some supper, get some dinner, or whatever. So I'll see y'all on the call tomorrow night. Okay? Again, appreciate you.
All right. It's going to be
Thank
big.
y'all so
Good
much.
night.
Love you
See
so
family.
much.
Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Tony.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Love you, PMC family.
Thank you,
Hi,
Tony.
y'all.
Love you all.
All right.
Thank you, PNC.
Everybody stay blessed.
Thank
Now.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone in South. Thank you so much. And every leader.
Thank you, Tony.